Right, now we've seen how we can produce a horse using basic shapes, but let's take this a stage further and look at a simple way of how we measure the shapes. I want to draw it into this small area here, which, as you can see, I've deliberately made slightly smaller than the photograph. So it means that we're going to have to draw the Statue of Liberty a little bit smaller, about a third smaller on here, to make it fit. There's a simple technique where you use, as well as basic shapes, you can create some basic measurements for yourself. In this case, it's the width of the statue, and I've estimated it to be somewhere between the 6 and the 0. If I put that marker pen down there, hopefully you can see, I'll put a little black mark. So if we say that the width of that statue is equivalent to that, let's have a look how many widths there are in the height of the statue. And again, we don't have to be precise. I'm going to say it's 1, 2, it's approximately 3 to where the arm leaves the sleeve there. And then if we take that again, we've got approximately another measure there for the height of the arm till it reaches the top of the base of the torch. Now I've actually made a little mark which is approximately half of that measure. So for example, between the nose, or the centre of the face, and the outer part of the arm here is approximately half a measure. And you can also use that and say, well, the basic measure for the area from the bottom of the folds of the gown to the plinth again is also approximately 1 measure. Now if we actually draw these as boxes, you can see exactly what I mean. That comes out as a square. In other words, the height there pretty well equals the width of the statue. Let's draw another one, which is another part of the measure, and if we draw a third one, you can see approximately there we have the height. Now, as I said earlier, I've drawn this box a little bit smaller quite deliberately because it's going to force me to draw this statue slightly smaller than it is in the photograph. But it's dead easy once I've got my base measure, because I haven't got any calculations to worry about. All I need to do is to say, well, I think the statue is going to be about that wide, which is, let's say, that comes up to that word progresso. So let's have a look. It comes up to the 8, 9. That number 8 and 9, it's approximately there. So if I say there's 1, 2, 3 to there. Now then, if I go to the 8 and the 9 again, I can just about get the top of the torch in, but it's going to be a bit tight to the border. Right, I've made a slightly narrower mark in there, so let's try that as the width. Now that happens to come up to that little, can you see that little arrow there where I've got my finger on? So we've made it a little bit narrower, which means that the height is also going to be slightly shorter. So it's 1 to there, 2 to there, 3 approximately to there, and 1 more for the outstretched arm, if you remember, which takes it up to about that point there. So right away, if I draw in quite a light box like that, then I know that essentially I've got the proportions just about right. Right, now I can start making progress with drawing in the main lines of the statue, knowing that everything is in proportion, even though it's about a third smaller than the photograph. So let's do that. Right, now I've checked the head against these proportions and it's about half a width high. And we need to add another half a measure or so for the top of the torch. Remember, I said that the folds of the cloth were also about, or the bottom of the folds of the cloth were 1 measure up, but then I can also estimate that this part of the cloth that comes out here is about 2 measures up. Now I'm not worried if the drawing slides inside or outside slightly of the guidelines, because remember, that's all these are only guidelines. You notice even now I'm only dealing in big shapes. We can estimate that the width of the torch there is about the same width as the face, so if we know that that's half a measure, then we can do the torch about half a measure, and then we've got here about a full measure for the total width of the spikes. And there, in, well, I won't say no time at all, but in just a few minutes we've got an outline of the Statue of Liberty.